Controversial Muslim cleric Bakr shot dead in Shanzu.
The child is currently recovering, fully moving his limbs, playing and even speaking.
A sigh of relief as the bullet is removed from baby Osinya's head.
Court says speed governor's rule is suspended after a day of suffering for Kenyans.
Nilifika mapema nikule sapa kwa sababu yangu kwa sababu ya watoto.
Nimeficha huyu mwanaume kama yani nimemfunika uchi yake yote mimi kama mwanamke.
And a man decides to bury himself alive over marital problems.
This is KTN Prime with Yvonne Okwara and Wilson Buru.
Well, it is the first day of April 2014. A very good evening to you and welcome to KTN Prime.
Indeed, many thanks for joining us. And we start off our bulletin this evening with news just in.
Absolutely. A controversial Muslim cleric, Bakr alias Makaburi, has been shot dead by unknown assailants. The attack occurred near the Shanzu law courts in Mombasa.
That's right. We now want to join our Coast Region's senior reporter, Ferdinand Omondi, who has details of this incident from Mombasa. Ferdinand, if you can hear me, tell us what happened.
Good evening. We have actually been here for preparing to cover the devolution conference happening here when we got information from the North Coast that two people had been shot dead right about 6 p.m. right in front of the Shanzu law courts there at Shimo Latewa, and we do have confirmation that one of them is Mohammed Makaburi, the controversial cleric who has been manning the Masjid Musa, which had been changed to Masjid Shahada. Now, the two people were shot by unknown gunmen. Eyewitnesses say that they were actually walkabouts who passed by, shot the people, and then now walked away. We do not have the exact confirmation from official sources, but we do know that Mohammed Makaburi is one of them. The Masjid Shahada, which is formerly known as Masjid Musa, has already made the announcement in their mosque, and as we're speaking, there has been reports of chaos in Majengo area after following the announcement. The other information I have from my camera person on the ground is that gunshots have been rent the air around Shimo Latewa area. There was a confrontation between the police and some youth who had demanded to take the bodies away, but I can tell you now that the bodies have now been transferred to the Bamburi police station just along that road. So that's the latest in Mombasa. There is chaos in at least one place amid the announcements that Mohammed Makaburi, the controversial cleric associated with Masjid Shahada, has been shot dead with a friend.
All right, Ferdinand, thank you for that information, especially what's happening in Shimo Latewa. We heard of some chaos in Majengo as well. Can you confirm what the situation is on the ground in Majengo area?
Yes, we do have confirmation that there have been chaos. Of course, that's a mosque where the controversial cleric has been going. And just to give you a little insight, is that Masjid Shada, or the what has also been known as Masjid Musa, has been the headlines for all the wrong reasons. This is the area where a lot of people have been saying, security forces in particular, have been saying has been a major place where the recruitment of people to the terror movement Al-Shabaab has been taking place. Of course, Mohammed Makaburi is now the third cleric from this mosque who has now been shot dead by unknown people. The first happened in 2012 when Abu Drogo, who has been labeled a terrorist and was very, very controversial himself, was shot dead in a drive-by shooting along the Mombasa-Malindi Road. A year later, Mohammed Amour, was late last year, also shot dead. 3 people again along Mombasa-Bamburi Road. And now we have Mohammed Makaburi also shot along the Mombasa-Malindi Road. So it's very, very, the shootings are almost very similar, only that this time it was not a drive-by shooting. And in all these circumstances, there have always been chaos. What has happened normally when this happens, there's been very strong reaction from people on the ground. A lot of youth now of course, getting very rowdy or getting very emotional. And what has followed, sad to say, is that some churches have come under attack at the moments like this, and hopefully that the police this time round are already putting enough security measures to man personal property and also as installations. We do expect not just to be a side here, but we do expect this will create a lot of tension in Mombasa, because Mohammed Makaburi is somebody who has been lately speaking a lot and accusing the police of being behind the spate of unknown killings of persons, clerics who have been labeled controversial, and perhaps aiding and abetting acts of terror in Kenya and also in Somalia. And therefore, sometimes also labeled himself somebody who's willing to die. This is something he had said before. And the last interview I did have with him last time, when the police officers raided the Masjid Musa to disrupt a convention which had been labeled as a recruitment for terrorism, he supported the mounting of the so-called Al-Shabaab flags, the most, saying that there is no law that has outlawed those flags. So he's been somebody who has been really teetering on the brink of very extremist conversations. But at the moment now, there is something that needs to be investigated to find out exactly who did this, and without really preempting, there'll be a lot of solid reaction on the ground, and it's something that will be keeping our watch on. But at the moment right now in Mombasa, particularly Majengo, and I'm getting information also in Kisauni, already tension has risen. Police patrols are being told are going around, and there's a story that now is developing alongside what is happening in Mombasa. And you do remember that only there have been arrests that were conducted following the shooting of at least 4 people in Likoni area. Police said that was a normal attack, but other observers say this was a terrorist attack because they went and shot people in church, and that is where the very emotional story of Baby Osinya came up. So this is something that will most likely be linked to the recent spate of attack that came here. Not to say that this person is really a terrorist, but these security operations have labeled this guy as one of the most wanted people and as a sympathizer. And this is a narrative that is most likely to come forth as we try and look at the reason as to why he might have been shot dead. But the killers have not yet been known, and hopefully the police will come up with a very solid investigation.
All right, thank you very much for that, Ferdinand Omondi, who's our senior Coast Region reporter. We now want to get a first-hand account of just what happened when Makaburi was shot this evening, and we want to speak to somebody who was there with him just after leaving the Shanzu Law Courts. We're speaking this evening with Alamin Kimathi on telephone. Alamin, thank you for joining us this evening. Tell us what happened.
Well, Yvonne, I have a very scanty detailed accounts of what happened. Apart from the fact that I was in court attending the mention of the Masjid Musa case, in which 28 people had been arraigned after in the Masjid Musa incident, which occurred in February, and Sharif Abu Bakr Ahmed alias Makaburi also happened to be in court, and he came amongst others, and other eyewitnesses or people who had turned up at the court, interested parties as well as relatives. And we had a brief chat outside the court, and mainly his interest was to know when the case would next be heard. There was apparent confusion when the magistrate did not turn up at the court, and we did not have directions about what would happen next. And therefore, Makaburi has then appealed to me to check with the court what would be the fate of the accused, most of whom had been granted bail this afternoon and released from custody pending the hearing. And I did exactly that. I went over to check with the magistrate on duty, and I came up to communicate to the accused persons who were then seated somewhere with Makaburi talking to them. And we did each other farewell. All of them, we decided, everybody took, there were very few cars around, and I remember seeing Makaburi getting into a Noah vehicle with which had about other 6 occupants. I don't really know at what stage he was left behind, because apparently I drove ahead, and since there was no public transport, some of those accused asked for a lift from me, where I dropped them at the Kengeleni Light Junction, only to, as I was getting into town, to start seeing a lot of messages, a lot of calls, people calling me, asking me where Makaburi was, and apparently they had heard the news before me.
All right, thank you very much for this account of just what happened there. And of course, to just ask you, now that you are in the coast region, what is the mood like amongst yourselves and the other people who were there and who last saw him?
Yvonne, it is very, very tense. We were trying most of this evening to access there has been a lot of rumors flying around where the bodies were, and before we could establish that the bodies were still lying on the scene, we were heading to so many directions only to find the roads clogged with traffic as people were leaving, mainly the island, apparently in fear of an eruption of possible chaos, which has been characterized past incidences of this, and where Makaburi is not just any other figure. That there are fears. The fears are very rife that there could be possibilities of chaos in the island. And business shut early, very early. The Majengo area, the island itself, and those of us who are heading north, trying to cross the Nyali Bridge, could not. As I'm speaking, I've just only now managed to cross the bridge and heading north, but I couldn't go beyond that and had to, retreat and get back, because in any case, it was futile to trying to go to the scene where we even had the bodies had already been removed.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Been speaking to Alamin Kimathi, who's an activist and who was with Sheikh Abubakar Sharif alias Makaburi just before he was shot outside the Shanzu Law Courts. So let's bring you up to date with what we know. This is what we know right now. Sheikh Abubakar Sharif alias Mohammed Makaburi, who was leaving the Shanzu Law Courts today after being in court with 28 other people who were arraigned following that incident at the Masjid Musa in February. He, according to Alamin Kimathi and the others, were waiting for the next court date after the accused were granted bail. According to Alamin Kimathi, Makaburi got into a NOA, and after that, that's when they heard the news that he had been shot dead together with another cleric that's there. We've been hearing from Ferdinand Omondi that gunshots have rent the air in Shimolatewa region. The bodies of the 2 clerics have been taken to Bamburi police station, and police patrols are also taking place in Kisauni and Majengo areas where tension is high. And of course, Ferdinand Omondi was also pointing out the other clerics that have also been killed, starting with Abu Drogo along the Mombasa-Bamburi-Malendi highway. This is what we know right now. We'll continue to keep you updated as we get news of this unfolding and developing story.
Absolutely, but let's now get some good news tonight, as Kenyatta National Hospital has declared baby Satrin Osinyo's operation a total success. The delicate operation took at least 3 hours as doctors removed the bullet that was lodged in his head. Najma Ismail has the details.
It was a sigh of relief as baby Satrin Osinyo finally let the world know that he was okay. After 3 hours of surgery at the Kenyatta National Hospital, neurosurgeons finally removed the bullet that had been lodged in his head, the same one that killed his mother late last month at the Joy in Jesus Church in Mombasa. The operation was not an easy one. A team of 12 doctors headed by the head of neurosurgery, Dr. Gishuru Mwangi, had to attend to the delicate and risky procedure of removing the bullet which had fractured baby Satrin's skull and lodged itself on his brain.
After surgery, we were able to close up all the wounds, and the child awoke uninventively. The child is currently recovering, fully moving his limbs, playing, and even speaking.
The hush-hush operation came as a surprise since many thought that baby Satrin's operation had been postponed for several weeks, as had earlier been announced.
And we did stabilize the brain. We never did anything extra from what the bullet had done for us. The track of the bullet, with meticulous brain dissection, we were able to retrieve the bullet just from that track.
Doctors declare the operation a success and assured Kenyans that baby Oena is recuperating well at the hospital wards under keen observation.
Around that bullet, there were major blood vessels, there were veins, there were arteries. So all that we had to save. So we had to go in safe, remove the bullet, come out safe.
Although the Likoni attack is still fresh on many Kenyans' minds, the good news of baby Satrin's recovery is a ray of hope for a country that is clouded by fears of terror attacks. Najma Ismail, KTN.
Right, now commuters were stranded across the country as Matatu operators kept their vehicles off the road following their failure to meet the requirements of the new traffic rules.
But as Joy Doreen Biro now reports, High Court Judge George Odunga has clarified that the operators had nothing to fear today as the new rule on speed governors has been put on hold.
April 1st was no Fool's Day prank as many would have hoped. It was D-Day for the implementation of the new traffic rules. Commuters stranded. Many caught in the early morning scramble to board the few available Matatus.
As early as 7 a.m. in the morning, some of the passengers you're seeing in my background have been stuck. And look at the time now, it's about 8:20 a.m. and most of them are still here waiting for Matatus to show up and take them to different destinations.
Nafanya kazi ya Ochumani ambapo nimeshinda usiku nikiwa kazini. Sasa asubuhi hii ninaona kuna uhaba wa magari ambapo hata sasa sijui nini inaendelea. Wanasema ati kuna mgomo. Sasa hii mgomo sijui inachangiwa na nini. Kama inawezekana inatakana tuweze kupata msaada, tukaweze kupata magari na
bime delay ilikuwa that fast. Nini hii ya kanjo bado ilikuwa jana. Hii nyingine nayo ya speed governor sasa sijui itakuwaje.
In sections served by the railway, those who could decided to scramble for space on the train, but those who didn't make it on the train hit the road on foot to their destinations. Spreading out, in Kajiado, children reporting to school had to camp helplessly at the bus stops, and when one Matatu turned up, the adults shoved the children aside.
Kama ni speed governor ukienda kwa maduka hakuna. Nakuta sahi hakuna governor.
And in Voi and Mombasa, border operators made twice the amount usually charged. The new traffic rules require that all public service vehicles be fitted with tamper-proof speed governors, have a tracking system, and eliminate any courier luggage. In Nairobi's Pangani estate, John Joroge, the owner of motor accessories, including speed limiters, has received 400 clients in the last 2 weeks, a show of last-minute rush to comply with the new rules.
We are charging them 35,000. Inclusive installation fee.
At the Motor Vehicle Inspection Unit, vehicles that didn't have clear definition of the circle they are registered under and non-digital governors were not inspected.
Our commercial vehicles, which don't have the new speed governor, they are not supposed to transport people or to transport goods.
The Motor Vehicle Inspection Unit says that when gazetting the new rules in 2011, the Matatu Owners Association was represented but has been adamant against complying with the rules.
In favor.
But there has been a temporary reprieve for the Matatu operators after the High Court Judge George Odunga clarified an order that puts on hold the requirement for speed governors until the case by Matatu owners is heard and determined. By end of Tuesday, over 10,000 vehicles countrywide were expected to have been inspected. Joy Doreen Bira, KTN.
Well, that story leads us to our big question tonight when you're asking, should the Matatu operators be given more time to comply with the new rules? Should the Matatu operators be given more time to comply with the new rules?
Well, we might feel a little differently after being stranded perhaps today. So please do let us know what you think. Send us an SMS. 22155 is the SMS number. Start with a yes or no, followed by a brief comment, and also leave us your name and location. And you can also send us a tweet at KTN Kenya, at Yvonne Okwara, and at Wilson_Mburu. Right, let's now give you an update on yesterday's events. Police have now arrested 657 suspects in Nairobi's Eastleigh estate following last night's terror attack that left 6 people dead. In a statement to newsrooms, Interior Cabinet Secretary Joseph Olelenku said a security operation has been launched in Eastleigh and will continue until all suspects and perpetrators of the attack are brought to book. But a section of Accord-allied lawmakers led by Suna East MP Junet Mohammed have called on President Uhuru Kenyatta to sack Olelenku and the National Security Intelligence Service boss, Brigadier Michael Gishangi, for failing to contain insecurity.
A contingent from the General Service Unit cordoned off the scene of last night's explosions in Eastleigh as the curious public milled around the scene. Last night, police carried out a swap and arrested several suspects to assist with investigations. There are conflicting reports on the source of the blast. Some witnesses say the explosions were at a store and an adjacent food stall.
Lori ya ile inafanana kama ile nazokota takataka ndio alitokea kile kona. Ametusimamia hapa malango. Tunaangalia hivi hiyo gari. Mimi naona mangaza inatokea hapa. Mimi nafikiri kama tairi inapasuka na mangaza. Bakale mimi naona watu nakimbia. Watu walipokimbia, mimi naanza kukimbia. Kusema wacha nikimbie, mimi naanguka pale. Naona hiyo gari amandoka anatena analipua pale. Ile hoteli
tulisikia sitima ilikosa. After kitu kama 5 minutes tukasikia mlipuko. Tukadhania ni transformer. Na ile ya kuna transformer pale karibu 12 Street. Na watu wakasema ni transformer. Lakini kitu baada ya dakika 3 barabara hii Second Avenue watu walikuwa na njaa bio. Bio. Watu wajui ni nini, watu wanasema ni transformer. Tukakaa sasa ripoti ikatoka pande hii tukaambiwa ni bomu.
The blast came a day after a suspected terrorist died on Sunday when an improvised explosive device he was assembling exploded. Residents are now living in fear.
Na sasa hatuoni vizuri hapa Eastleigh. Mambo imekuwa ngumu.
Watu wasema Wasomali ndio wanafanya hivyo Wasomali. La.
A section of residents have urged the government to carry out a thorough search in Eastleigh and flush out criminal elements out to spread terror.
Hatuwesema kabila gani lakini hii watu baka kaguliwa kabisa. Najua sasa hii manyumba yao yasijia. Rojengi zao wanakuwa wamefunga. Nyumba amefunga.
Hata serikali pia huwezi chua. Hata wewe mwenyewe huwezi chua. Mtu anakula chakula haiko karibu yako. Nani anajua? Ziko watu tu wanataka tu fita.
The government has placed security forces on high alert in Nairobi and Mombasa after police last month intercepted a top-range vehicle with 6 improvised pipe bombs which police believe was to be used in a terror mission. Patrick Amimo, KTN.
Now, there was drama at Tivani village in TransCentury County when a man dug his own grave and tried to bury himself alive. The man claims he has marital problems that he cannot solve and thus going to heaven is his only hope. Najma Ismail brings us that story.
This is what residents of Tivani village in TransCentury County woke up to this morning. This young man had dug his grave overnight as his wife and children were asleep and was desperately trying to bury himself alive. Neighbors were shocked as they looked at the man, fearing he had gone insane. His wife claims that her husband has abandoned his responsibilities.
Nimeficha huyu mwanaume kama yani nimemfunika uchi yake yote. Mimi kama mwanamke nimejaribu juu na chini kumfunika uchi wake wote. Lakini ninaona ni kama ananidharau.
The man, a tout, claims that he has had enough quarreling with his wife and the only way to end his misery is to end his life.
Hao watu wamekuwa wakisosana na tumekuja mara nyingi hapa kuja kusuluhisha mzozo kati yao.
However, after several hours of cajoling, the man came out of his grave and elders urged youth to plant a banana tree to ward off evil spirits.
Ni sababu ya kwamba watoto pia alafu wasidi kuendelea kuishi. Hata kama kutakuwako na neno ingine isipatikane tena.
Mke wako ametenda dhambi.
Later on, a pastor arrived at the couple's home to try and calm the situation.
Nilifika mapema nikule sapa kwa sababu yangu kwa sababu ya watoto. Nikaa tu njaa hivyo.
The young man was also ordered to take a bath at a nearby river and slaughter a goat to expel bad omen. Najma Ismail, KTN.
Right, let's now take you back to our top story this evening. Radical Muslim cleric Bakr Sharif alias Makaburi has been shot dead tonight by unknown assailants. The attack occurred near the Shanzu Law Courts in Mombasa. And now we're joined, of course, for more on this story by our very own John Alanamu, who has some details.
Controversial, outspoken, polarizing, and now dead. Bakr Sharif, the Mombasa-based Muslim cleric, often a thorn in the flesh of the security apparatus at the coast, was reportedly gunned down this evening along the Buries Shanzu Road alongside a young companion who, according to reports, is Hafith Bahero. Makaburi, who has variously been linked to terrorist group the Al-Shabaab, the radicalizing of young Muslims at the coast and the funding of terrorist activities down at the coast, was allegedly gunned down outside the Shanzu Law Courts after coming from the hearing of a case involving the youth who clashed with police at Masjid Musa in February. His murder brings to 3 the number of controversial clerics who have been killed within the past 3 years, all 3 along this same road. In life, the cleric often claimed that there was a state-sanctioned campaign to eliminate radical Muslims or anyone linked to suspected terrorists, telling us that he knew that his number would be up soon.
I was warned that these guys were looking for me. In fact, the mosque that I used to pray in, I didn't go to the mosque.
He espoused controversial views, unafraid of stating his support for the Al-Shabaab.
I agree entirely with what Abu Drogo was preaching. We should ask ourselves, Mungiki, our heroes in this country, want Mungiki killing innocent people while they were fighting for their freedom, for the freedom of Kenya.
2 weeks ago, Makaburi scored a victory in court after the police were ordered to compensate him for damage to his property in a raid on his home 2 years ago. Ironically, it's outside a courthouse where he met his death. John Alanamu, KTN. Well, it's now time to take a short break, but not before we remind you of our bigger student. Tonight, we have edited our question a bit. We're asking, why should Matatu operators be given more time to comply with the new traffic rules? Why should Matatu operators be given more time to comply with the new traffic rules?
So send us your thoughts. We're already receiving them on SMS. The number is 22155. Start with a yes or no, followed by a brief comment. You can also get us on Twitter at KTN Kenya, at Yvonne Okwara, and at Wilson_Mburu.
Take a short break now, but don't you go away. We have much more after the break. Tourism Ministry blames terror for reduced revenues.
Tukiona wakusaidie, na kiasi kwa upande nyingine naona kama tunanyanyaswa kwa upande nyingine. Waongezea watu wa matatu muda wa kuweka hizo vitu zao, wachipange na pesa. Kama watapata pesa, wachipange kuweka hizo vitu, wawapee muda, sio kuwashika. Watafanya nini?
You're watching the most comprehensive bulletin in the country. This is KTN Prime.
Right now, the tourism industry is feeling the effects of terror attacks in the country. The number of tourists visiting the country has gone down following a number of terror attacks, the worst being the Westgate attack in September last year. Tourism Cabinet Secretary Phyllis Kandia says international tourist arrivals have fallen by 7% in the last few months. Kandia spoke as ministries continued releasing their scorecards.
It was the turn of 5 ministries making up the second cluster of the cabinet under the chairmanship of Mining Cabinet Secretary Najib Balala to give their self-assessment. With the country having been hit by several terror attacks, the biggest foreign exchange earner is feeling the pinch, with international tourist numbers going down.
International tourist arrivals dropped by 7%.
On the domestic front, though, things are looking up.
Which is measured in terms of the bed nights. It increased during the year from 37% to 41%.
The Ministry of Energy and Petroleum, which is working on a 5,000 megawatt power transformation project, says progress is being made. But those hoping that the cost of power will go down may have to wait a little longer.
It is not possible to substantially reduce the cost in the first few months, or for that matter in the first 12 months, because you will need to have put in a power plant.
The Ministry of Roads and Infrastructure was reporting some progress, from the construction and rehabilitation of roads to the improvement of the performance of the Port of Mombasa.
There was an increase in the cargo throughput from 21.9 million tons to 22.3 million tons.
By mid-year, despite the budgetary constraints, we constructed a total of 180 kilometers of new roads.
The new kid on the block, the Ministry of Mining, may be the youngest ministry of the bunch, but has big plans ahead.
Currently, we are 1% of the GDP. We hope in the next 4 years we will raise to 3%.
On Wednesday, the Ministries of Interior and Coordination of National Government, Defense, Foreign Affairs, the National Treasury, as well as the Attorney General and the government's senior constitutional and legal affairs advisor will outline their achievements, challenges, and priorities for the future. Drita Tinina, KTN.
It's time to talk money matters, and Boni Tunyo is in our business studio tonight. Boni, a very good evening. How are you doing?
Very well, Wilson. Just if you do remember, yesterday KTN alluded to the fact that there's going to be management changes at Mumias Sugar, and today the CEO has been sent on compulsory leave. I have the details. My name is Boni Tunya. This is business. Mumias Sugar Managing Director Peter Kibati and Commercial Director Paul Murgor have been sent on compulsory leave by the firm's board of directors. Here's KTN's business editor Joseph Bonyo with the intrigues of the Miller's boardroom.
So now we've moved from the stage where it was previously government parastatal.
Peter Kibati was appointed Managing Director of Mumias Sugar Company in April 2012. This followed the resignation of the current Nairobi County Governor Evans Odhiambo Kidero. Before then, Kibati was the Miller's finance director, while Paul Murgo was the director in charge of agriculture before being elevated to the position of a commercial director. According to sources at the day-long meeting held at the firm's Nairobi offices on Monday, the decision to send the two home was reached to allow an audit on their performance. In his 2-year stint as the chief executive officer at Mumias, the company slipped to a loss-making territory. However, in its latest half-year results, the firm had shown indications of emerging from the decline. Also in the period, the Miller stepped up its diversification drive after it commissioned a water bottling and ethanol distillery plants that are expected to reduce its reliance on sugar business. Sources further tell KTN Business that Kibati's appointment had drawn controversy, especially among the political class in the Western Kenya sugar belt. This has seen a number of politicians from the region call for his resignation owing to the poor run. Like all millers in the country, Mumias has been struggling to pay its contracted farmers. This, it has noted, is associated with low sales of sugar in the market due to an influx of imported sugar. However, in a recent visit to its go-down in Mombasa, Parliament's Agriculture Committee indicted the miller for abusing its import quota. The beleaguered management denied these allegations. Joseph Bonyo, KTN Business.
Listed investment firm TransCentury has exited from its investment in Rift Valley Railways. TransCentury sold its entire stake in the railway joint venture to Egypt's Citadel Capital as the company seeks new investment opportunities elsewhere. Here's KTN's Michael Karanja with that report.
Rift Valley Railways won a 25-year contract to run the 2,352-kilometer Kenya-Uganda Railway in November 2006 on the cargo business and a 5-year contract for the passenger unit. Since then, the concession has changed hands, with the initial South African investor buying out unceremoniously. This opened the door for the likes of TransCentury and Citadel Capital to swoop in and take over the concession in 2010. TransCentury initially had a 20% stake in RVR, but this grew to 34% in 2010, when Citadel Capital came into the picture with a 51% majority stake in the company. But in January this year, TransCentury announced it was looking at its RVR investment with a view to reduce its shareholding. But in a joint notice with Citadel Capital sent to the Nairobi Securities Exchange, the investment firm announced it was selling its entire 34% stake to Citadel Capital. This pushes Citadel's majority stake in the company to 85%, while Uganda's Bomi Holding holds the remaining 15%. Despite the mounting criticism RVR has received from the government over the delay in upgrading the railway network, TransCentury CEO Gashao Kuna believes the company has the right ingredients to succeed. TransCentury plans to explore other ways to support the RVR business in partnership with Citadel Capital. TransCentury, which started off as an investment club, has over the last 1 year been reducing its presence in other sectors to focus on the oil and gas industry, where it can fully deploy its power, logistics, and engineering capacity. It is, however, still not clear where TransCentury plans to reinvest its money following its exit from RVR. Michael Karanja, KTN Business.
Jambojet, a subsidiary of Kenya Airways, has begun its flight to Mombasa, Kisumu, and Eldoret from Nairobi today. At a cost of 2,850 shillings only, Charles Kitonga was in the inaugural flight to Mombasa and brings us these details.
The airline says it has lined up 5 flights to Mombasa, 2 to Kisumu and 1 to Eldoret on daily basis, with the aim to fly about 600,000 passengers by the end of this year. On the first day of operation, the carrier terms customer response as overwhelming.
If you look to social media, Twitter and Facebook, you see all the reactions coming in. Kenyans are always a bit reluctant. Seeing is believing, huh?
For the first 8 months, the airline added it will operate domestic flights and later open up to other destinations within East Africa. They say the price is competitive for the market and will ensure a sustainable and quality service.
The plan is to go international in East Africa, so to cities like Zanzibar, Kilimanjaro, Dar es Salaam, Entebbe, Kigali, Addis Ababa, those kind of things.
They also pointed out lack of basic infrastructure as a challenge they are facing as they await completion of runways in Malindi and Lamu. The travelers who used this low-cost transport facility for the first time expressed their satisfaction but pointed out need for more frequent flights to cater for their travel necessities.
Now that the demand is overwhelming, then they need to respond accordingly.
It is hoped that this cheap and efficient transport will facilitate trade and local tourism, further enabling economic growth. Charles Kitonga, KTN Business.
I totally envy Charles, but now you know it was not a Fool's Day prank. It is actually real low-cost airline. Let's talk more numbers now as we look at how the markets closed on Tuesday, with a look at the money market report coming up next.
KTN Business, in association with
Safaricom Business.
Jisort na Samsung Galaxy S3 Lite for 5,000 bonga points and 6,999 shillings. Available at all Safaricom shops countrywide.
Right, so that's how the numbers looks like on the day that National Bank was the biggest decliner, going down 9% with the price of 27 shillings. I have more numbers tomorrow. My name is Bonnie Tunya. Back to Wilson.
Well, thank you very much, Bonnie, for that. Let's now take A recap of our top story tonight. And radical Muslim cleric Abu Bakr Sharif alias Makaburi has been shot dead by unknown assailants. Let's look at what we know at these moments. What we know is that Makaburi was leaving the court for a mention of a case in regard to the Masjid Musa incident. Another activist, Alamin Kimathi, says Makaburi got into a vehicle and left the courtroom, and they were given reports later on that he had been shot dead. Now, Makaburi was shot dead together with another cleric, and it was in the same spot where another radical Muslim cleric, Abu Drogo, was shot and killed in 2012. The bodies have been transferred to the Bamburi police station. We have reports that there is tension in Kisauni area as well, and police have intensified patrols. That is what we know at this moment.
That's right. Do keep it KTN, and we will continue to update you on these and other stories. For now, though, we want to take a short break, but we will be right back.
Well, just a final thing on that Manchester United Bayern Munich game. Nick Mudimba said that he's going home and he'll wait for the results tomorrow. Speaking of results, the results are in for a big queue tonight. We were asking, should Matatu operators be given more time to comply? And here are the results.
52% of you say no, 48% say yes. Let's take a look at your views on our SMS line. Edwin from Dagoretti. I say no because these people thought the government was not serious. They've been playing dumb. What have they been doing since the directive was passed? They should now bear the consequences. On Twitter, Hilary Basulai, you say no, we shouldn't relent. Otherwise, it may take us another decade to get it right. Wakenya tukaze kamba.
Absolutely.
And here we go. Let's take one last one. Abdul Rahim Mohammed, you say yes, more time for Matatu owners as we Matatu commuters face a hard time getting to work.
Well, that's all we had prepared for you tonight. Enjoy the rest of your viewing. Have a good night.
All right, good night.